funk. Thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, high late in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Cop myself a cup of coffee, sip of water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, cop myself a cup of coffee, sip of water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and reconnect to myself and all that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress and bring me looking like when blessings drop in. And so I cop myself a cup of coffee, sip of water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah, let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
Get yourself together before it's too late. Good evening, everybody. Divided we stand. Tonight, Friday night. Unusual, but for the best. Because can't make it tomorrow night, and I don't want to miss it. So, here I am. Good to see everybody. I know we probably won't have the audience that we normally would have, but that's okay because the show must go on. See if I can kick the light up just a little bit. Yeah, something like that. No new news concerning Dave at all. Has me worried. Just what can you do? Yeah, Sandy, I was worried. I was just mentioning to Ronnie earlier today, I was considering doing this. I don't want to step on the toes of Sandy's show. And I did notice that you had a show a couple of days ago. And I believe Jennifer Hines came in to visit you. So it seemed like you pretty much had done your work earlier this week. So Friday night's a little bit better. Oh, like this, and there's nothing in there except ice. Anyway, as you can see from the title of the program tonight, I wanted to discuss an individual I didn't realize was such a son of a bitch. In fact, I think I mentioned him last week. But what this person is and what this person has done is so cruel at least ostensibly, that you have to say something. And I know other networks are mentioning him, but it's not like the main story, and I suppose it shouldn't be. But something has to be said, because, and I'm talking about Brett Favre. What Brett Favre represents is everything that we don't like in people. And it also represents the Republican Party as it is today. Because, again, having a discussion with Ronnie tonight, we were just sitting down there at the table, and she said something like, "Can you believe how evil they are?" And normally I would say something like, "Yeah, I mean, every day it gets worse, blah, blah, blah." But this time I answered differently, and I said, Ron, it's almost as though we should be asking, can we believe that we didn't expect this from them? And Ronnie and I were always kind of ahead of the curve in this, because we both never trusted the Republican Party. Our state of tune is almost exactly the same. So I think it really shouldn't be a surprise to me or to my wife or to any of you, because I think many of you are kind of on the same wavelength. And this leads me to my opening comment. You may know that I spent a while in my life being a musician. I used to teach guitar. It was a different time for me. And someone who enjoyed jazz and fusion, I didn't really listen to lyrics that much to songs. Everybody kind of knew the lyrics to Stairway to Heaven or whatever song they liked. It seemed as though everybody else, was attuned to lyrics, where I really wasn't. I always had the lyrics wrong 40 years later. But there was one artist whom I could feel what she was saying, and it was the first thing that I would notice or recognize in a song, not so much the harmony or the melody. And that was, of course, Joni Mitchell, which is going to relate to tonight's show. And one of these songs that's just always kind of had a tremendous effect on my thinking was the song Banquet. And I just want to show you the lyrics. Many of you probably have heard this song many times before. I wouldn't say it's my favorite song, but in terms of how many times I've listened to this because of the lyrics, it would be my number one song. And if you go through the first stanza, so to speak, and then the last one, it kind of sums it all up. So you'll forgive me for reading through this with you. Come to the dinner gong. The table is laden high, fat bellies and hungry little ones. Tuck your napkins in. Take your share. Some get the gravy, and some get the gristle. Some get the marrow bone, and some get nothing, though there's plenty to spare. And I have a kinship with that song. I don't know exactly. I mean, I think it's kind of straightforward about what Joni Mitchell is saying there. I mean, I think coming to grips with why some people just kind of fall into good things and others not. And what makes it worse is there's plenty to share. And the people who do have take advantage of it nonetheless. And you can imagine a banquet, and there are many tunes out there like this. But this one is the one that always hit me. This is the one where the lyrics came through. Because I didn't even have to, study the lyrics. It was just an intuitive feel, as though, I was experiencing this with the world in front of me. And this is what I'm going to get into tonight. Because when you get somebody like this, either one of them, obviously, it represents the worst in what she describes. I mean, it's almost fitting that these two are together. And you would think someone like Brett Favre, playing with many African American football players who probably came from modest beginnings, would have the slightest bit of empathy or sympathy, or at the very least sympathy, for the plight of the poor. But as I will discuss tonight, as you probably already know, he's simply incapable. And what makes it worse is now that the media has begun to hold him accountable, that bold football player who was willing to take the hits, go the extra yard, when it really came down to it, he dodges the truth. He fears the truth about himself more than he fears a 300-pound lineman. And just like the rest of the Republicans, he's going to play this game with the truth. Because there is no truth. But this is especially insulting. This case is especially insulting because this man, this made well over $100 million. I don't know exactly, $140 million as a player. Endorsements. And despite the fact that he earned that type of money, he wasn't shelling it out from himself, from his own pockets. He was taking from the most vulnerable in society. And not only was he taking, but others in that corrupt state of Mississippi, the poorest state in the Union, but gets almost 40 to 45% aid from the federal government, especially after they have a tax cut coming. You would think this guy would be a better person. And many people wonder why I'm a determinist. How he grew up in Mississippi had to be one hell of a childhood. I'm not making excuses for him, but it has to be dealt with. So I'm going to deal with it tonight. Okay, so let's look at the big picture first before I go into all the things that he probably is guilty of. Again, Mississippi, poorest state in the Union, gerrymandered. We know what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi. where the Republicans are pointing fingers at the Democrats in that city for poor management, when in reality, the federal funds that were supposed to go there were embezzled, absconded with by this kind of shit. And no wonder you see them together. I mean, because it is kind of like a COVID of greed. It just spreads. You can't get the truth out of anybody. They're just trying to take money from people. And like COVID, it takes so long to deal with this. So let's get the picture right here. I'd like to show you the decent people of Jackson, Mississippi, who pay their taxes for clean water. But as getting into musicians tonight, as Bob Dylan would say, their clothes may be dirty, but their hands are clean. They're paying for what they should be getting, clean water. And meanwhile, the Republicans in that state, the governor, they're going to point the fingers at the very people who have been abused. The people at the banquet are going to accuse the starving of their own problems. These people deserve so much better. And you and I know this. Just imagine every day having to get bottled water. And again, you're paying for water that should be clean. But instead, has to be boiled. And you can't boil out metals. So you get this kind of stuff. And these two assholes, it isn't good enough for them that they've made money in their lives, that they've had it easy. No, they have to take more. I'm taking a few peeks here, by the way, while you guys are chatting here, and I just see Sandy's here. It's right, Sandy. Let me post this now while I see this. I'm going to try to keep up tonight. Sandy says, Brian, I don't feel like we will ever get social justice. I mean, look, Sandy, you and I are roughly the same age. And we haven't seen it. I mean, it was going in the right direction. But it's kind of like a movie. If you get what I'm saying. Kind of like a movie where you're waiting for the ending to come, and it's going to be good. There's the protagonist, the antagonist, and then we're going to go through all this within the plot, but eventually you're going to win. But again, I've said this before, it's kind of like 1941. We didn't know that Germany was going to lose in 41. It didn't look good in 41. So you're right, Sandy. I mean, this time we don't know, and we may not get there. Because it looked like we were going in the right direction. But these people, they're like a toxic cancer that makes it impossible. So let's just quickly go over the background of what's happening here. Let me go back to me. So we know that Mississippi gets federal funds. All states get some amount of federal funds. But in this case, apparently, Mississippi was taking funds and moving it in places where it shouldn't have gone. I'm going to show you. This comes from an article from the Mississippi Today. It just goes to show you, let's just even forget about the actual money first, okay? But the leverage that goes on with these Republican politicians. So there was an election, I guess back in 2019, you had a Democrat named Jim Hood in a race for governor against Tate Reeves. And Hood's wife was working in some department where they were helping out families. And there was a gentleman named Webb who was the lieutenant governor. And when this race was heating up for governor, they said that they wanted to get this Hood's wife out of there. That agency wouldn't get any money unless they got rid of Debbie Hood. So in other words, they're using the leverage of saying, here, you're not even going to get this money if you hire somebody who's related to a Democrat. And this was easy to do in the state of Mississippi. This would not have been easy in the state of New York or the state of Pennsylvania even, or definitely not New Jersey. But this is the kind of thing that they would get away with. Again, it's the leverage. It's like somebody who's wealthy has leverage because they can get loans, whereas someone like you or me would have difficulty. So we push it forward. Now, of course, Brett Favre has been suspected of other things too, cheating in so many different ways. But we're going to stick with the money from the federal government that was supposed to go to the poor, to places like Jackson, but got into other people's hands. And if you know anything about the story, essentially Brett Favre was trying to get money to build a volleyball arena, or whatever you want to call it, in Mississippi. But he wanted to get the money through these federal funds, through the government. He was basically looking into that. He didn't want to pay it himself, though he could have. Again, let's look at the metaphor here. You know, this is the banquet that Joni Mitchell's talking about. And some guys there complaining about the soup being too salty. Well, meanwhile, people don't eat. And we'll get into the texts that he was sending, which essentially show his guilt. I don't know how he's going to trump this and explain it out. I wasn't thinking this. Right? So I think it's best now that I show you. This actually comes from a sports program with Shannon Sharpe. But I think he laid it out best. If I can find it. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to turn off the background music. And we're going to go to the web. And you might have a little bit of echo because I have to. All right. So let's watch Shannon Sharpe.
Governor obtained welfare funds to help build a new volleyball center at the University of Southern Mississippi. Shannon, how much do you think this could tarnish Brett Favre's legacy?
Well, I don't think none can tarnish it, because if you go back and look at his history when he played in the NFL, they should have tarnished it already. I talked to people that was in the room when Brett Favre went to the Hall of Fame, and nobody mentioned about text messages that he sent to that jet masseuse. Nobody mentioned anything about the addiction that he suffered from. But yet T.O., they brought up everything. Can you imagine if T.O. would have had an incidents like Brett Favre off the field? T.O. still, to this day right now, would not be in the Hall of Fame. Yet they walked right past it like Brett Favre did now.
True enough.
That is true. I give you that.
The problem that I have with this situation, you got to be a sorry mofo to steal from the lowest of the low. Skip, Mississippi is the poorest state in our country.
It is.
Its citizens. So if they're the poorest state, Brett Favre is taken from the underserved. You made $100+ million in the NFL. And they're talking about, well, he didn't know. This is what Brett Favre takes. If you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much? So if you got to ask this question, is there any way the media can find out? You already know you're doing something wrong. The mere fact that you don't want anybody to know. So you know you're doing something wrong. And Skip, he wanted to seem so philanthropic. He wanted to change the perception of the narrative. He take money for some damn volleyball arena.
Well, his
daughter played. So, you see what Brett Favre did for his alma mater? No, he didn't get no money came out of his pocket. He stole money from people that really needed that money.
Yep.
Man, this is embarrassing. And he's not the only one. Ted DiBiase, a former wrestler, even Marcus Dupree, a great running back at the school that you loved growing up, Oklahoma. He got money. How can you got to be really low to take from the poorest of the poor? Brett, you ain't got enough money? Okay, Skip, listen. You know you're not supposed to have this. But how about go give the damn speeches? They're paying you to give speeches, and you didn't even give the speeches. And now you won't even pay the money back.
Right, that brings up a point here. Let me go back to my other scene here. What Shannon Sharpe was talking about, I believe in 2017, he was paid millions of dollars or whatever to make speeches. Never made them. So once they started investigating, of course, Favre said you know what? I think I can find that out somewhere. But he paid it back without interest. I guess he said he didn't realize this. I want to make sure I'm right about this, but I do know that he was paid for these speeches. And he didn't make the speeches. In fact, there's a whole series of commentary on Twitter about him. It says here, they killed Eric Gardner for allegedly selling loose cigarettes. They killed George Floyd for a counterfeit 20. But Favre conspired people to steal $5 million in welfare funds. People who have pled guilty. And by the way, someone did plead guilty, and it looks like probably point the finger at Favre so that he can obviously reduce his own sentence. Okay, but this wasn't it. There were speeches also, and like I said, he was paid for these. He gave the money back later after they were after his ass, and he didn't pay the interest back that really would have been in the coffers of the state. So he should have paid back the interest. It's just horrific what this guy did. But again, the greater point is that, number one, he's stealing from the poor, and he has $140 million. Minimum. $140 million. Right? And again, he played in a league with fellow football players who mostly came from modest backgrounds. Have some respect. And he has none. And then, it's no wonder that you see something like this. And how many Brett Favres are out there? I mean, there are just a ton of them, except there aren't many of them who have $140 million in their bank account. The guy is a motherfucker. And like Trump, I mean, the FBI is investigating. And again, somebody already pled guilty. But to reduce his time, I'm repeating myself, to reduce his time, it looks like he's going to point the fingers at Favre. Now, meanwhile, we know what Trump does. He tries to stall everything out. So now this is what they're going to do. Then you're going to see Congress get involved with helping Trump out, bury these investigations. I mean, the FBI is investigating Brett Favre. But what's going to happen if somehow Congress takes over, they bury the investigations, make it impossible, and then no wonder it answers Sandy's question, are we ever going to see social justice? Because it feels like it's not going to happen. Okay. Now let's just look at what Shannon Sharpe was talking about, because we have to address this, and that is the texts. And of course, Shannon Sharpe read this out, and I agree with him 100%, because I think, there's really only one thing you have to look at that will mean anything, and that's that first line here. And this is a legitimate screenshot of what was out there for the texts. I'll read it. If you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much? So already he's got the conditional there. If you can pay me. So in his mind, he's thinking, can you do this thing? Can I get this thing? But not having anybody find out. Because Favre wants his image up there as the great hero. See, so he's concerned about two things here. No, it's obviously the money, number one. It's not just one thing. It's not just the money. It's the fact, he says, will the media find out where it came from? Because he knows he can get in trouble. It's actually three things. And then the third thing is, will it impugn his character? Which he has none. It's devoid. All right, so Nancy New, who's part of kind of that circle of people I was talking about from that Mississippi Today article, with the woman who was told, fire this person or you're not going to get the leverage. So the response from Nancy New is, no, we never have had that information publicized. I understand you being uneasy about that, though. Let's see what happens on Monday with the conversation with some of the folks at Southern. They're talking about Southern Mississippi, University of Southern Mississippi. Maybe it will click with them, hopefully. He says, okay, thanks. So she's trying to allay his fears in that first sentence, at least saying historically, we've been okay. It's kind of like, it's the 1960s and, they're selling firecrackers at some store. They know not supposed to sell them, and we've never gotten in trouble from the state. So sell that kid a cherry bomb. But let's just keep it under the cabinet, and just in case somebody has a sting on it. We'll give him the cherry bomb, though. Make a buck. So he says, okay, thanks. So the next day, she gets back to him. She says, wow, We just got off the phone with Phil Bryant. Now, that's the former governor, I believe. He's on board with this. We will get this done. Of course we're going to get it done. It's like in the style of Huey Long. I think he was a Democrat, but that's 1930s. But he's going to get it done. Phil Bryant is going to get it done. And you know what you have there? The Old Boys Network. He's going to get it done. Just like Bill Barr was going to have it done. If those things keep getting done, we're going to have what Russia has, because they got it done completely. And we've been waiting 80 years for it to change. And despite that goddamn war, despite 40,000 soldiers dying, and how many are wounded, we'll never know. Despite that, they remain in control because they got it done. These people keep getting it done. And I'm sick and tired of it. So, Phil Bryant, look, he's just another asshole in the crowd if you think about it. He's going along with the plan, and now let's look at Brett Favre's reply to that. We're going to get it done. Awesome. I needed to hear that for sure. He needed to hear that for sure because he wanted his fears allayed that he will get the money he wants for his daughter. You know? Because his daughter's at the banquet and she's going to have her cake and eat it too. But he needed to hear it not just for the money. It's not the money. He wants to get away with it. Like Trump. I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And he can get away with it because he knows it's wrong. He needed to be sure. Why did he need to be sure? Because the motherfucker knows that it is wrong. These two little text clouds explain it all. The okay thanks doesn't mean much, but the first one and the last one. It's old boys on the right and new guy on the block to join him on the left. And $140 isn't enough for him. Because you know what he's saying, folks? He's saying, fuck these people. I need $4 million, whatever it is. Let them drink this. It's essentially, because he doesn't have to drink that. Right? And this is why this connection with the song is so strong with me. Because I know those types. And the $140 million isn't enough. He's probably got stock, so he's earning money doing nothing. These people have made a lifestyle out of doing nothing. And then they're going to paint the picture that these people are lazy and there's mismanagement. You're going to blame the victim, like you hear all the time with rape. And people wonder why I get so fucking upset. I should be talking about climate change right now. 10 years ago, it looked like that. But I realized the real cancer is there. And that song goes back to that simple idea that she probably thought in her head. that Joni Mitchell was thinking. How do I come to grips with these people having the food, some of them having not much food, and some having nothing at all, and there's the banquet? At least that's what I feel she's coming to grips with. We know that the pictures painted of that banquet and the poor and everything in between and the gristle. And I don't want to offend anybody who's religious, but they've got the ultimate out. And what is it? Forgive me of my sins. And I'm sorry, I'm going to offend some people, but those people who believe in religion, who the hell is God or anybody divine to have the right to forgive somebody else's sins? How fucking arrogant can you get? And this is what runs through them. Is they get that one out, even if it's the last second before they die. I believe in Jesus, or God's going to understand. He's going to understand what I did. So you can just say at the last minute, I didn't mean it. After the fact. Right? And people like us, or most of us, you see that and you say, it's fucked up. Because it gives people like this the license to do this shit. To be the asshole. And no wonder Joni Mitchell, I think, is saying, how does this happen? I'm sorry I can't check the comments out tonight, folks, because I just... And I go through this myself. Every day. I was, taking a walk today. And I said to myself, it's interesting. When you're going to lose things that you love, and this is why I really like our group here, because we've all had our tales of hard luck. I'm not here to talk about my tales, because I know you've got them yourself. You and I are essentially the same. And I was going through some of the sad moments of my life as I'm walking. I don't know if that happens to you guys. I'm listening to music, and actually tonight I was actually listening to Joni Mitchell. And I said, I can never truly look at this life or this universe as anything good, because I can't look at the things that were so bad, even the things that I regret doing, and say, this was a good one. This was a real good one. In the end, it was good. No, it just was. Some things were unacceptable. And I see it every day. Again, I see the animals. I was watching a video of this cow crying, this pig tearing up because they're getting rough with it, and they knew where they were going. Or I have to see two baby does killed on the side of the road because somebody couldn't slow down with his F-150. And yet they're good people, like you. They're good people. And it's no wonder that I get comments like, how can we ever get social justice? So I think it has to be rearranged, that thought. Like teachers will say, well, how am I going to get this kid to change? And it doesn't. Or maybe you don't get some of these kids to leave the school being like you want them. And then you almost have to turn inward and say, how am I psychologically going to be able to deal with the fact that I'm going to fail? And the worst of all for me is to see the animals. And then these shits I mean, Brett Favre, that's the type of guy who's going to take a turtle and he's going to throw it up in the air. Now, he'll keep his own dog. But essentially, that's what because he doesn't give a shit about anybody. The very fact that he's going to take $4 million or whatever the fuck it is from these people in Jackson and let them pay for water that should be clean, and then you're going to have the governor complain against the local politicians in charge who aren't getting the federal money because assholes like Phil Bryant gotta be the old boys. So when you sum this all up, this banquet, you and I aren't invited, but we get to look at it. Maybe there is something out there that says, I'm just going to show you the shittiest thing I can. You know, this universe, for the most part, is really a shitty experience. You cannot say that this is a wonderful thing as long as something else out there's having a tough time. Because you have one fucking nothing. If you think of it as that way. I'm not talking about you folks. You know what I'm saying. But this is the mentality, the idiocy. And you're all going to get the free ticket out. But not for me. Because if there is or was a God, which I don't believe there is, that is the thing that first has to be addressed as being guilty. Because just like Brett Favre was, again, he's worried about his image. And from a biblical perspective, the first 4 commandments are all about image. And I don't want to have this a conversation about religion, but in a certain sense, that's what it is. Don't take my name in vain. Which is what Brett Favre is saying. I want to be able to get my daughter this because she deserves a $4 million, but don't put my name in vain. Right? Because I wouldn't want to be embarrassed. If I can just get through on this and you do it for me. You be my assassin, Phil Bryant. Get the money. We'll be part of the old boys. Because I want to stay in the Hall of Fame. I don't want to end up like Pete Rose. So you people are the diamonds in my life. In a sense, again, we don't see each other personally, though one day we should probably have some type of meeting when we can, but it's this kindred spirit because it's running low here. I mean, again, there's a lot of good people out there, but people that look at those things and say, this has got to change, or I can't eat this anymore, or I can't believe in this God thing. Because he keeps getting worse. A lot worse. If you have to fear something because it is going to dominate you and it's going to decide your outcome. As a kid, you kind of feel like you know everything you need to know when you're 4. Anything that's really important. Like when you first see that something gets hurt, you say, ooh, that doesn't look good. Or this doesn't sound right, this whole death thing. So it's really ugly, folks. It's really, really ugly. Because, like I say, there are plenty of Brett Favres out there. Some of them don't have that kind of money. But they're willing to play that role, to assume that role of the asshole. And I'll go to my grave, or when I leave somehow, when I'm gone, when my consciousness goes, I would imagine if I have my faculties up here, if I have them, I think, and I'm not trying to be funny. I'm really not trying to be funny. Maybe I should be looking at the camera or something like that. I don't know. It's very difficult because it's a little spot there. I think in the end, I mean, those last few minutes, I would think of the things I love. What the fuck, you know? I don't think I can think of any other thing to say at the end, but what the fuck? I mean, do you get what I'm saying? It's just... I mean, when you do see things, at least seemingly clearly, when you realize, you know, that Santa Claus didn't come down the chimney sweep, or the chimney, right? When you realize that the movie's a little bit different than what happens in real life. And when you realize that, as John Mitchell says, some people get the gravy. Some get the gristle. And some get nothing, despite the fact. I think there's another line there. The marrow bone, too, right? Yeah. There's nothing to spare. So, this is why we fight the good fight, I suppose. Just try to become a better person, knowing that despite these things, you know, there's no win in the end. It's like what Bukowski would say: it's life is about walking on how you can walk on the fire, the sadness. The sadness is kind of a very loving thing too, because we've talked about our pets. We're talking about people we love. The sadness is an indicator of value. I mean, just even crying is, at some level, very intellectual, because there's something that has to be generated in the brain that shows some type of value that was taken away. Something that was really that important. Something that, you know, could have happened 30 years ago, but it still affects you. That means there's that value. That's probably what you can take with you, or I can take with me through this life. That I did have some things of value. And it's just a shame that these people who are dishonest, the Trumps, the Barrs, the Roger Stones, and all the people in between who say, oh, that's okay. I can look the other way because my gas is $4.50 instead of $4.12. You know, I'm kind of goddamn sick of people talking about it's the economy, stupid. You know, it's just you're paying an extra 30 cents, so now you're going to vote the other way. That's how shallow you're going to be as a human being. That you don't even want to understand the economics of the world. That it comes down to the economy. You know what it comes down to? You know what it really comes down to? It comes down to this. People. Decent people. Who get shit on all the time. And these are the people, you can walk down the street, they'll give you a smile or help you out. It's like Zelensky said, you know, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. I don't need God, I don't need a book, a 2,000-year-old book to tell me these people are fucked up. And something has to be done. And we have to go out there and vote. We have to state every time when Brett Favre does something like this, it's got to come out. It must be exposed for what it is. As I would expect somebody to do that to me. Human beings, man. I'm telling you, it is. You just shake your head. It's like that greedy mechanism in our DNA. You're right, Joey. I'm just looking here now. Sandy said, but what is going to be done, Brian? What's going to be done? Well, the first thing we have to do is you have to vote. But even then, I guess that's what you're saying. What's going to be done? Well, as long as you have an opposition party, a minority party in the opposition, I don't know. I even said I said this tonight. And my mother-in-law, was kind of shocked when I said it. I said, I'd rather have martial law than Trump being in power. And I'm serious. This is something I would not say. And if Dave were here, I think Dave would say it too. Because Dave is, always anti-military in the past, but he's looking at the evils out there and say, yeah, I'd probably want martial law from Biden if we were going to have these son of bitches do this shit. And as Joey said, the Republicans, it's what you see happening down in Jackson. The first thing they do is blame, the victim, and this is and Biden, in a sense, is the victim because they've given him nothing. The Republicans on any one of the votes have given him nothing, zero. They've obstructed him, and despite that, he's got something done. And in the end, as much as some people who are far left don't like Biden, say he's a corporate guy, considering all the shit that's been done, he has done more than any president for climate right now. Despite the assholes. He's gotten, more money for people who are going to need it for medications. Despite the assholes. And he is definitely, to me, taking more turn to the left than he has to the center. He's gone for it. And probably because he realizes that the other side is intransigent. Absolutely 100% intransigent. So I have no problem with the man. I don't care if he stutters, stammers, falls. Looks like his skin is melting. I don't give a shit. I don't care. I'm not going to listen to Jimmy Dore and tell me that, this guy's just going to do whatever the corporate wants. No. There's a lot of corporate bullshit out there that hates him because of what he's trying to do with, obviously electric cars and things like that. It's not perfect. But it did the one thing that we need. He did what he could at that time. That's the best we can do, given the experience at that time. 100 years later, if we're still around, they may look back and say, well, he could have done more. Well, put your ass back in this time and see how well you do. So I don't know, Sandy. As long as you're going to have this assholery around you, and me and everybody else, it'll just be a struggle. But there's one thing that we can't give in. We can't let it go Russia on us. We can't let them win. If they're going to make things difficult, we're going to take a tooth. And as John Reed once said, you're going to see a lot of good days and a lot of bad days, but there's some things worth, fighting for. And if you're looking for Jesus, you're going to have to be Jesus yourself. If you're looking for a Superman, you're going to have to put the Superman suit on yourself. If you want that fight to be broken up, you may have to get in there and do it. Or as Mario Savio said, you may have to put your back to the gears. Myself, or like 1,200 people who protested in Russia after the calling up the reserves. At some point, you're going to have to be that dog who goes up against the big dog, but he goes up against it because it's his nature to defend his nobility, despite the fact that he or she is going to die. This movie is one that, for us, doesn't end in the way you want it to. Life to me is like watching a movie 2/3 of the way through and you never get to have the ah. Dorothy made her way home. Because you never do. You never get home. But you get one thing, and only one thing, if you're honest with yourself about it. That is the truth, which is more important than anything. It's more important than love. It's more important than climate change. It's more important than anything that we could ever think of. And that is the truth. And apparently, a lot of people can't face it. And let's go to a few comments, and then I will end it. I mean, this is about an hour and a few minutes so far. Not going to be a long show. Next week, I might have the guys on, gals on. I mean, be nice to see some folks there. See, Kim's here, Epi's here. Epi, thank you for showing up on a Friday night in Scotland. I hope everything's going well over there. I sound like such a doomer. I do all kinds of local activities, but it doesn't feel like anything makes any kind of difference. I get it. Well, you are doing what's right. And whether it makes a difference or not does matter, but it's important. I mean, I've got to keep doing this. I mean, I feel, I wish Dave were here, but I know I've got to keep doing this. Dave would want me to, and I'd want him to do it. So you go on, and you just live. I'd want martial law fucking having MAGA maniacs, brown shirts roaming with free reign. I'd want, right. I mean, there's some things worse than death. These motherfuckers. Is Jimmy Dore still on? Jimmy Bohr. All right, so I'm not the only one. Yeah, thanks for the likes from friends and the shares and all that. Your own personal Jesus. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's come down to, too. I mean, when you look at evangelicals, there's the type that have the jets, there's the other types. Everybody has their own view of what Jesus wants you to do. I wonder if there was a real Jesus, but if you could bring him back, just not so much to judge, but just watch. Just put the screen on. Or if you turn it around and said, well, let's look at Jesus as he was, and then, that was Jesus, And it would be kind of like, in my opinion, I'm just fantasizing, that, I remember stories about, The Wizard of Oz and the people who played in it. We know that Judy Garland had a pretty intense personality, and the woman who played the Wicked Witch, was actually a very kind person. So I'm just wondering, like, I'm not saying that Jesus would have been bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if you actually saw that person, whomever we depicted as Jesus, it maybe was a lot simpler and maybe not perfect, and maybe those of you who are religious, if you saw that, maybe it would be extremely depressing, because you say, oh shit, the atheists were right. It was just another flesh computer, so to speak. Just another human being. Folks, if you want to see something good, just look at your dog or something. I mean, you'll see about the best that can come out of the universe. It'll sit with you and look forward to have you come home. It's like it's the coming of Jesus. There's your good. Or you think of all those animals at the shelters, just trying to find a home, and they're shaking. And when they find somebody, you have that, you just see that relaxation that the animal can have, that somebody loves it. It's such a wonderful thing to see. It's about the best thing in the universe you could see. Instead of Brett Favre raising his fist because he's Super Bowl MVP. You're welcome, Karen. Karen's here tonight. Karen, thank you. It's, look, I think we all kind of, at least in this group, have generally the same feeling. I mean, I know that what I'm saying hopefully is pretty much on par with everybody thinks. So I'm just expressing what you express anyway. Kim, thanks, Brian. Love you. Thank you, Kim. Take care, everybody. Make sure to have some love and peace. Yeah, I mean, and I'm lucky, Thank you, Kim. And I know how much you care, I mean, I saw that with the thing with the animals. I see it, how honest you are with people. You call bullshit, I mean, you will just say it. I mean, I've seen it on Facebook. I mean, I'm not going to mention any specific instances, but I've seen where you said just the truth. Cut the shit. What is this shit? I mean, I've seen it. I appreciate that. That's... You should appreciate yourself, because you do it right. Pitbull Jesus, no thanks. I don't know. I would doubt that he would be like that, But, well, I love Seven Rescues, Brian, and they love me. So, yeah, and that's... If that's what you're going to get, and that should be what you take with you, that despite this, and I'm going to say awful experience for the most part, because again, even if you have had a decent life, we know the awful experience for most. We can only guess what the dinosaurs went through, just tearing each other apart. And I mean, they felt. So it's such a sad experience. So when you have that good event, folks, just always be careful to not be too happy. I learned that just from driving when, I'd see the roadkill. I'm listening along, listening to the music and thinking everything's okay until, shit, another one. Couldn't somebody fucking slow down? Okay. They're programmed. I tell you, Trump was programmed as soon as he was around his father. And his kids are going to be the same goddamn bastards that he is. And they're going to react the same way. This is why we have this fight. But again, we have to be like the little dog, like my dog, who, despite the odds, would defend those who took care of him or her. Despite the fact they would die, they would defend to their last bit of blood. So it's upon us to learn from the animals and to have sympathy for an animal that's going to slaughter and tearing because it's lost its calf. It's the saddest thing. And it's what happens. And it's even worse over there. I know I'm talking about Russia. And this weekend, by the way, I speak with my friends. I got 3 big 2-hour discussions tomorrow and Sunday. You know, I have to go through that state of tune because I can't do this complaining to them because they've had it all their whole lives. This 80 years, this country of just complete fucking Brett Favresville. Anyway, I want to thank everybody. Sorry I didn't get to, I only got to see a couple chat, whatever's out there. Maybe I'll check it out later. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Couldn't make it tomorrow. And I know there's like 9 people. That's fine for me. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy what you can. The best we can do. And I'll see you next week, I believe, on Saturday night. Peace, if you can find it. It's a tough one.